Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and this is the second in this React Parcel tutorial series. So again, we're teaching React, but we're doing it with the React Parcel setup, which we built in the first video. So we have our boilerplate, which I did in this project, one folder. Now, just to show you sort of how you can use this, so that way you don't have to like do all that setup every single time, I'm just gonna copy and paste this folder, so that way I have a second copy. So I can always just kind of build from this boilerplate. So I'm gonna copy, and then just paste it into here. And there we go, we have project 1 copy. I can rename it project 2, and we'll work from there from now on. And now, basically, I have all my stuff pretty much set to go. Okay. Oh wait, did I update imports for project 2? No. Okay, there we go. So I have all my files, except the package.json. Why didn't that copy over? Okay, so let me copy that over. Copy, paste. There we go. Let's see if there's anything else missing. Distribution, node modules. Oh, in my source folder, then I copy over as well. So let me paste that over. And the index.html is there. Otherwise, then we're good. And node modules, we got everything in there. No, but I can always just reinstall everything. So let me go into my project 2. So let me close this terminal and reopen a new terminal in this project 2 folder. Open in terminal. Okay, and then just to make sure to see my node modules folder looks pretty incomplete. So what I'm gonna do is do an npm I, and I don't need to specify all the details because I'm just gonna read my package.json and download all my dependencies based on my package.json, which has everything kind of lined out. So again, a lot quicker setup. So we don't have to spend another half hour setting it all up. It's just going to work. So while that installs, let's go back in here and begin working on stuff and start talking about actual React. So again, just to kind of recap, the way this works is that React is generally going to inject itself in the DOM through a starter div. That's what this div does. Okay, so the standard convention is to create this div that has an ID of root. That's going to be sort of the injection point for your React code. And generally, it starts with an app component. So that's what we have in our app.js here. This creates a component, which we did as a function. Okay, we always have to import React. We only have to import React DOM here because this is where we do the injection. Okay, we're saying, hey, React DOM, inject it into our HTML, inject this component, and we're going to build our whole website from this component. And we're going to inject it right where that div is. You could have multiple injections, so if you really wanted to kind of have multiple components injected directly into your HTML, you could use this React DOM.render more. But the convention is that you do it all from, you build this app component and you build subcomponents from there. Okay, that's the basic way of doing it. And again, basically the way this function component works is that you just return some JSX, which you wrap in parentheses. You can use a fragment to just kind of wrap your code in, and then you just do HTML. There are some conventions that you have to kind of worry about. So if you wanted to use classes in your CSS, you have to use the property class name, okay, not class like you would in normal HTML. The reason being is that the word class is already used for classes in JavaScript, so it gets confused. As you saw earlier, if you want to do inline styles, you pass it in an object, not a string like you would in normal HTML. Pretty much anything that would be hyphenated in normal HTML becomes camel case, okay? And then pretty much everything becomes camel case. So for example, if I want to do an on-click event, it's going to be on-click, not just on-click. We'll go through all those over the next few videos, okay? But what we're going to do first is I'm going to show you how you pass data to your component. So there's data that's internal, which is state, which will be talked about separately. And then there's props, which is information that comes from the outside. Okay, and that's always passed in via parameter props. Okay, so let's pretend that instead of hello world, we're going to have a props, we're going to interpolate. So you can always put curly brackets, and that allows you to inject data into your JSX. Actually, what you can do is you can inject any valid JavaScript expression in these curly brackets, and then what it'll do is it'll just put whatever the result of that expression is. Okay, so my expression is just going to be a variable, so we're going to say props then we're going to pretend that that props has a property called hello. We don't know what props will have off the head. We just kind of have to know it because we're making the code. So I'm assuming that a hello prop is going to be passed in. Now, how does a hello prop get passed in to the component? Well, here is where I brought in the app component. So to pass in a prop, I just add it like I would add any other property onto an HTML tag. So it'd be hello equals hello world. Okay, and there you go. So I'm sending the string hello world, and now this will still say hello world here in the H1 because it's pulling it from props. So let me just save that. And we're just waiting it over here for that to finish installing. But that's how that would work. Okay. And cool. Okay, and now that's done. So let's do npm run dev so we can test this out. And it should still show us hello world, which is still reading from this CSS file. So it should still show up as hello world in red. The only difference now is that the hello world isn't hard coded into our code, it's here in props. So I could switch this out and just change what it is whenever I want. And the cool thing is this allows you to make more reusable components, because all your components are not going to be just static the same every time. You can actually inject variables that allows you to customize the component every time you use it, which makes it pretty useful. Okay, so just waiting for it to build. See, it's building. It's building. But once it's running, we can just leave it on. Okay. But hey, you know, this is a lot quicker startup than the previous video where we built out all this boilerplate. So that's should be open it up in the browser in a second because it's built. Let's head over to the browser, save ourselves some time, and oh, computer's being slow. Oh, localhost, there it is. And hello world, it's still red. Nice, very cool. Okay, so now let's actually start building out stuff. Let's actually start adding more components, so you can start seeing where this becomes pretty cool. Okay, so we'll create like a header. I'm gonna go to source, and in components, I'm gonna create a new file. And this will be my header.jsx. Okay. So from now on, all your components will be in JSX files. Okay. And let's see here. Actually, it doesn't even need to be in a JSX file. You can just do it in a normal JS file. So let me rename that. The only thing that matters here is that at the top, okay, we make sure we import React always. Import React from React. And if you want to bring in a separate CSS file for this particular component, we could do that. So we can sit there and say import, and then just put the path. So we're going to go up a file, then down to our CSS folder, and then we'll create a file called header.css to go with this particular file. So the only styles that apply in this component are the ones that belong in this header CSS. So you can give each one its own individual CSS file if you wanted to. You don't have to. Okay, so new file, header.css. Okay, but it just gives you a little bit more organization because you know the CSS for this component belongs in this file. But again, Parcel bundles it all for you at the end. Okay, so let's create the component. So now that we have imported the stuff, now we just need to create a component. Again, a function component is just a function. So this is going to be const header, equals, and again we have to pass in props to the component. Okay, and this is just going to be our header. So return, I'll wrap this one up in a header tag because that just kind of makes sense. Okay, and then I will use the nav tag in there, and then here I'm just gonna have a bunch of divs for links, just mock links. Link 1, or I'll just write link. Save. There we go. Okay. And then I need to export this header. So I need to export header. Export header. Okay. Or actually even easier, just make sure this is all super good. You don't even need to write the name there. If you want to make this real simple, you just do export default and just make it that this is the default export is this function. So whatever you call it, it's gonna be this function. And now we can bring this back to our app.js. We'll import this, so import, and we'll port it, and we can call it whatever we want. We're going to call it header because it just makes the most sense. From /components, so /components /header.js. Okay, so it's going to go find that file, import that header component, which we can now inject into here. And so now header will be part of our component. Now here's where we start getting into rules of JSX. So another rule of JSX not only is like everything camel case now as far as properties, but everything has to have a closing tag. So when you use a component, it's just going to be self-closing. But again, even when you use things that never close, like BRs and inputs, you have to make sure you put that closing slash. You can't leave open tags in JSX. But there's our header component. So we should already start seeing it if we go to our file here. So that's going to refresh. It's rebuilding. And see, there's the link. Okay, we want to make that look a little bit nicer, so let's do some styling. So I head over to header CSS because that's the one that that particular component imports. So we have the nav component. So I'm going to turn that into a flex container. So display flex. And I'm going to justify the content. Space around. Okay, border. Prefix solid black. And we're going to have some padding. So we'll have 5 pixels of padding. Okay, the width of the container will be 80%. And the margin is 10 pixels auto, so that way it's centered. Okay, save. That should give us, and there we go. So that's going to look more like a nav. And see, it only applies to that component. Okay. Now what I'm going to want to do is go back to the app.css because I want to center that h1. Text align. Center. Save. Cool. Okay, so we're starting to see kind of we're building this in little pieces, and I can the cool thing is I can reuse those pieces. That's where this also is pretty awesome because now that I have this header component, I can just do this. I can be like header, and now watch what happens. Okay, it's updating, and now I have it 3 times. Okay, so it creates reusable pieces. Okay, so we can sometimes create reusable pieces. Okay, that like a button or something like that. So we have a button that we want to look a certain way. We can design that button as a component and then pass in like the text on the button as a prop. Pass in a function that when the button is clicked as a prop. So that way that button has all the functionality in the world. Okay? And that's actually, let's do an example of that. Image, just create another component. New file. Button.js. Okay, and this one's going to be really simple. So we import React from React. So you do this enough times, you just kind of get used to it. We'll import a CSS file. Why not? Import, and again we have to go up a folder because we're inside the components folder right now. Then down into the CSS folder, and then down, and we'll have a button.css. Okay, and then we'll do const button equals props. Props. You just do this enough times, just kind of get used to it. And then again, we return JSX. Okay, and then this is just a button, so we'll just have a button tag. Okay. And the text will be passed down as props, so props.label. And then if there's an on-click event, it'll be on-click equals, okay, props dot click. So we'll pass down a function as a prop, and that'll be the click function. And so now this button can do whatever I want, but I'll just style it once and I'll never have to style it again, and I can just do button and pass down what I need to pass down. Super easy. Okay, so I just need to make sure to export to this button. Okay. Oh, actually, in that case, let me just do it this way. Export default, it's just easier. Okay. Save. Cool. And we are good there. And now I can bring this into, first let's style it. But actually first let's bring it into app so we can see it. So onto app.js. We need to import the button. Import button. And again, always capitalize your components because you don't want to get confused for lowercase button, which is a tag that already exists. So JSX is case sensitive, is my bigger point here. Okay, button, and that's going to be ./components/button.js. Okay, save. Let's it's rebuilding and it's a little frozen. I'll give it a second. There it goes. Oh, it's complaining about something. What is it complaining about? Oh, I didn't create the button CSS file yet. New file, button.css. Okay, and I'll just do some basic styling. The button tag, I want it to have a background color of blue. I wanted to have a text color of white. I wanted to have some padding to make the button not look so claustrophobic. So we'll say 10 pixels. Go around the corners a little bit. So border radius. We'll make that 15 pixels. And we'll leave it at that. We'll see how that looks like so far. Back to my app.js. Let's add a button. Okay, and then we're going to pass in a prop that is button. Well, first is the label. Well, how did I do this again? Button.js. The prop is label and click. Okay, so we're going to pass in a label, which will be click me, and then we'll pass in a function, which will be on the click, and that we use the curly brackets, and we just pass in a function. This function will just basically console.log hello world. Okay, so when you click the button on the console, should make console log. Then I just need to close the button, and there we go. And then I can make a second button, and this one will be, say, click me 2, and it'll say hello world 2. So you can see the two separate instances of the component. Okay, so let's go to our website, see those buttons appear. So it's just re-updating up. I think we hit an error of some sort, or it's just not built. Okay, so let me check here, Control-Shift-I. So that means there's an error happened browser side. So that means the console should have, because if it was an error during building, I'll see a build error here. If I see a blank screen, then there's probably an error somewhere when it ran. Cannot find module React. Okay, so somewhere I imported in wrong import. So let's go to the button. Import React from React, that's fine. Import CSS, export default, that's all good. React from React DOM. Import button. React from React. Import CSS button. Yeah, that looks all good. Someone hit save so that way it rebuilds again. Yep, there we go. I don't know what happened that last time, but okay, now if I'm looking at the console, if I click the first one, hello world. If I click the second one, hello world 2. Okay, so that's neat. Okay, so I have just created a very flexible button component that I can use over and over again, and it can do whatever function I want. I don't have to create a button every single time. I don't have to create and style a button every single time I want to enhance a component. And that's where you start really getting into the benefits of React, where you start building the little pieces that you're going to use over and over again in a way that you can use over and over again. And then you're only filling in little pieces of data that are different from each time you use it. Okay, so hopefully this makes it kind of, you're starting to see sort of how fun, and again, in this case, if you're using React in this right now, it's running in the browser. This is not server-side rendered. So we're creating all this code and it's working live. Imagine if this is jQuery, we would have to, again, create the button, add the class to the button, so that way it has the styling, and then apply an event listener. Here I just put in that tag and fill in those props, and it works. Okay, I just pass in that function, I just pass in that label, and huzzah. So I think that's what we've learned here is a little bit about like using components. We learned a little bit about props. So I think this is a good next step in learning how to use React. Probably in the next video what we'll do is we'll start using state. Now since we're using function components in this tutorial series, we're not using state as you might use it in class components. We're going to be using what's called React hooks, which are ways to get a lot of that cool data stuff that's in a class component, but use it in functions. So we'll go over that over the next several videos, but I'll see you guys in the next one.